I'll take A.J. Brown over Drake London, and here's why. I just think he's so much better than Drake London, which again is not a slight to Drake London, but A.J. Brown is another guy. If he were if A.J. Brown were on the Vikings, he'd be unstoppable. I could see him going for like 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns. He's that good of a player. The only thing that holds him back is low pass volume. We're not seeing that from Drake London. What we're seeing from Drake London is like a nice, solid player. He doesn't make a lot of big plays. I talked about his yak so much last year. It was a little bit better, but still pretty bad last year. He just doesn't do a lot after catching the ball. So I think he'll get more targets than A.J. Brown. I think he's going to need probably 20 more targets than A.J. Brown to be better than A.J. Brown. And I expect the Eagles to pass a lot more. Fun fact, not more than the Falcons, but more than they did last year. Fun fact.
Me too.
These two teams, believe it or not, even though the Falcons threw the ball a decent amount, these two teams were last in the NFL in green zone pass rate last year. The Falcons, oddly enough, they just became super run heavy when they got inside the 10-yard line. Drake London led the NFL with an unbelievable rate of percentage of his team's targets in the green zone. He had over 50%. He had like 54% of his team's targets in the green zone. That was number one in the NFL. A.J. Brown has also led the NFL in that stat. He did it in 2022. But anyway, if the Falcons throw the ball more, they become a better passing touchdown team, then we've got huge upside for London. So I did find it kind of easy to make the case for London, but I'm going to stick with A.J. Brown, Dave, just because I think he is a superior player. He is a truly elite alpha wide receiver. And even last year, which wasn't a great year for him, he still averaged more fantasy points per game, just barely, than Drake London in PPR.
16.7 to 16.5. You're right. And that's with Drake London having nearly 2 targets per game more than A.J. Brown. But if I multiply 2 targets per game by 17 games, Adam, you said it, that if Drake London's getting 20 more targets over the course of a season than A.J. Brown, he's going to be better in full PPR. And this is absolutely format dependent. Half PPR, non-PPR, I'm making a beeline to AJB. But Drake London, with Penix throwing to him, I think it's going to end up being a very good thing for him. I think he's going to be the trusted number one guy. And I think he's going to continue to see high target volume. You are not drafting Drake London for his athleticism. You are drafting him for the passing volume. You are drafting him for the green zone target share, like you talked about. Certainly that can lead to some good touchdown production. But if it's a league where catches don't count as much and big plays count more, then A.J. Brown's your guy. Completely format dependent between these two, but in full PPR, I will lean toward London because I think he'll get more targets. And you mentioned it, there is a little bit more upside, I would say, with London based on the target volume. And if the quarterback is better than what the Falcons had for most of last year, then London can certainly outperform AJB.
I don't know that I agree with the upside take. I still think Brown has more upside because if the Eagles can get back to passing for over 4,000 yards, last year they passed for about 3,500 yards. The 2 years before that is like 4,300 yards, 4,000 yards. Then I think A.J. Brown has more upside than London, but he probably has more downside too, just because of the offense. But okay, Jamie, what do you think? Brown or London?
They're back to back, so like both these guys a lot, but I lean Brown more than London based on the upside. I do think that if Brown does what he's capable of doing, then he's top 5 upside. I don't think Drake London has that. I think what we saw last season from Drake London is kind of his ceiling. And I'm a big Drake London guy from last year, but I don't know how much better he can be, just based on everything that's going on with this team, everything that's going on with him. We still don't know what the rest of this receiving core is going to look like because I think they had somebody in the draft. But in terms of the downside, if Penix stinks, like this could be bad for Drake London. There's a lower floor, I think, for what he can be. Like last year was kind of the floor, I think, for A.J. Brown. And I think we all kind of share the same sentiment. Like we expect the Eagles to be a little bit more pass happy simply because the run game I don't think will be as successful for what Saquon Barkley's coming off of. All the work, the history of 2,000-yard rushers, there will be a step back here. So especially if Barkley misses any time, then it's more on Jalen Hurts, more on the passing game. And I think that favors A.J. Brown's ceiling. I just think there's another year that he can get to where Drake London can't.
So I think that that's an important direction that we could send this conversation to. Do we really, how much do we really believe that Saquon takes a big step back next year? Because if we're really buying into Saquon not being as efficient, maybe missing some time, 28-year-old running back coming off of 482 touches
Wow.
over the season in the postseason. Yeah. Like if we really believe that, then I think that it's a no-brainer that the Eagles will throw more. And that would obviously help A.J. Brown. And now here I am playing devil's advocate the other way. I just quickly did this. Maybe I wish I had done this before I did my rankings. Remember how in week 18, Penix started for Atlanta, meaningless game. Mooney didn't play. Drake London had 40.7 PPR points. If we Azer stat that game out, he averaged 15 PPR points per game flat. So I think if you do buy into London, I think you have to buy into Penix as well. And what if Penix pulls a Stroud? We'll learn about Penix during the preseason and the lead up and what the reports are like coming out of Atlanta. But if we believe two things: one, Penix isn't a lock to get better, and two, Saquon Barkley is going to get worse, and the Eagles are going to have to change their philosophy a little bit, then this is a U-turn. We should go with A.J. Brown before Drake London in all formats.
This is where Browns finished per game in 3 seasons with Philadelphia. 7th per game in 2022 in both non and full PPR. 2023, he actually had 158 targets in 17 games. He was wide receiver 12 per game in non-PPR, wide receiver 7 per game in full PPR, only caught 7 touchdowns. In 2024, he was 10th per game in non and 13th per game in full PPR. Whereas London last year was, I think, wide receiver 14 per game in full PPR. And that was the question. Jamie, you said maybe he hit his ceiling last year. That was kind of the question I had about London. Can he be better? I mean, I think he obviously can if Penix has, a really good season. But also that stat about them being so run heavy, the lowest pass rate in the green zone, so weird. And the second fewest green zone pass attempts, which it was just, I don't really get that imbalance, but I mean, obviously get the ball to Bijan. I get that, but it was just, I don't know. I just thought maybe there was a chance for more touchdown opportunities for him. But that being said, he did catch 9 touchdowns last year. It's not like he had a bad touchdown year.
Do we know how many of them were like longer than 20 yards?
No, but probably not that many.
That's what I'm saying. Like I'm starting to really, I'm changing my mind as we sit here.
Yeah.
So I don't like doing that. I'm sorry that I'm doing that, but it's kind of how I'm feeling.
I think the thing with London is it's just a wild card. If Penix is awesome, then London will benefit in a huge way and probably be better than A.J. Brown. But it's a wild card. I think what you saw from London last year is probably, I don't say easy to replicate, but it's something I think that can be done again. Like A.J. Brown's just been so solid and still in his prime. And again, depends on how you view what the Eagles offense will look like next year.
All right, let's get to our next one here.
Real quick, London's longest touchdown last year was from 30 yards out. It was a deep ball from Cousins against the Raiders in week 15. All of his other, he had a touchdown from 21 yards out, from 20 yards out. Everything else was in the red zone. I'm sorry, James?
Cousins played in week 15?
He did.
That was his last game. He got benched that game, I think. Or, I don't know, he threw like 17 passes that game.
4 touchdowns inside the 10 for Drake London last year. So the two stats that, again, I wish I'd seen this before I came on the show, but it's the offseason. It's okay. Only 4 green zone touchdowns for Drake London. That's not good. 15 PPR points per game if you take out his biggest game in a meaningless game without his number 2 wide receiver. I think the better picture, Jamie, to paint on Drake London is he's probably more of a 15 to 16 PPR point per game guy. And if I'm going to play the consistency card like I did earlier with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I've got to do it with A.J. Brown too. 16.7 PPR points per game or more each of the last 3 years. It's Brown.